Hi everyone. This video will help you to understand the basic meaning of psychology and psychology as a discipline. Actually, in your psychology textbook in class 11, you'll have to study 9 different chapters. And chapter 1 is what is psychology, chapter 2 is methods of inquiry in psychology, chapter 3 is the basis of human behavior, chapter 4 is human development, chapter 5 is sensory, attentional, and perceptual processes, chapter 6 that is learning, chapter 7 human memory, chapter 8 thinking, and chapter 9 motivation and emotion. In chapter 1, it is basically important for you to understand the basic meaning of psychology. So it is known as what is psychology. So it will help you to understand the nature and role of psychology in understanding mind and behavior. And after reading this chapter 1, you would be able to state the growth of the discipline and also know the different levels or different fields of psychology, its relationships with others, disciplines and professions. And also you would be able to appreciate the value of psychology in daily life to help you understand yourself and others better. So this chapter in that sense is very important for you to understand the basic meaning of psychology. So it is very important to know the meaning of psychology first of all. Actually, any knowledge discipline is hard to define, and because it evolves continuously, and also because the range of phenomena it studies cannot be captured by any one definition, and hence it is very difficult to define psychology in that sense. And a long time back, actually, students were told that the term psychology is derived from two Greek words. They are psyche and logos. Psyche meaning soul and logos meaning science or study of a subject. Thus, psychology was a study of the soul or mind. But since then, it has moved away considerably from the focus and established itself as a scientific discipline which deals with processes underlying human experience and behavior. Okay, so the range of phenomena it studies, some of which we mentioned, that are spread over several levels like individual and dyadic group, organizational, and so on. They also have biological as well as social basis. Naturally, therefore, the methods required to study them also vary greatly depending on the phenomenon one wants to study. So, at a time, psychologists defined it as a study of the soul or mind, but later on, some psychologists also stated that psychology is not the study of the mind or soul because the term soul and mind are not clear, and science also is not so much clear, and hence some psychologists also define psychology as the science of consciousness. Some others also define psychology as a science of behavior, but these definitions were not so much clear, and hence later on psychologists they tried to define psychology from a scientific standpoint. So, keeping this view in mind, psychology is defined formally as a science which studies mental processes, experiences, and behavior in different contexts. Okay, so this definition actually is known as the best definition because it uses the methods of biological and social sciences to obtain data systematically. And this definition also states that psychology is a study of mental processes. It also states that it is a study of the experiences, and also it studies about behaviors in different contexts. So it makes sense of these data so that they can be organized as knowledge. And because of different angles, actually, modern psychologists accept this definition as the best definition or the most suitable definition. Now, first of all, it is very important for us to know the meaning of mental process. Okay, so what is meant by mental process? Now, mental processes actually are the conscious processes or the processes of awareness. Okay, so we use our mental processes when we think or we try to solve any problems, we try to remember something in our life. So, all these are actually some kinds of conscious processes, and they are known as the mental processes. And one level at which these mental processes are reflected is the brain activity. Okay, so if our brain is active, then only it is possible for us to complete all these activities, like remembering something we need the brain activity. Okay, and in knowing something also we need our brain activity. So brain activity in that sense always are active in mental processes. But however, we cannot say that brain activities and mental processes are the same, although they are interdependent. Okay, so mental activities and neural activities are mutually overlapping processes, but they are not identical. Always remember that mental activities and neural activities are not identical. The Unlike the brain, actually, mind does not have a physical structure or has a location. That means we cannot locate our mind, and there is not any physical structure in mind, but brain actually can be located. There is a physical structure in brain also. Now, mind emerges and evolves as our interactions and experiences in this world get dynamically organized in the form of a system which is responsible for the occurrence of various mental processes. But this is true that brain activities always, or brain plays important role in all the mental processes. Our mental processes are active only because of the brain. Our brain regulates all these mental processes. Because of the brain only, we can experience different things in our life. We can memorize things, we can perceive things, and so on. Brain activities provide important clues as to how our mind functions. But the consciousness of our own experiences and mental processes are much more than the neural or brain activities. Even when we are asleep, some mental activities go on. We dream and receive some information, such as a knock on the door while we are asleep. So, some psychologists have shown that we also learn and remember in our sleep. So, mental processes such as remembering, learning, knowing, perceiving, feeling are of interest to psychologists. So, psychologists actually study all these processes to understand how the mind works and help us improve the uses and applications of these mental capacities. The next term is known as the experiences. Psychologists also study different experiences of people. Now, experiences actually are subjective in nature because different people experience in different ways. So, all these are subjective in that sense. Subject to subject, it differs. We cannot directly observe or know someone else's experience. Only the experiencing person can be aware or be conscious of his or her experiences. Thus, our experiences are embedded in our awareness or consciousness. So, we cannot observe other person's experiences. It is completely internal in that sense. But from the overt activities, we can infer something about the other person's feelings or thoughts to some extent. So, psychologists, they have focused on experiences of pain being experienced by terminally ill patients or of psychological pain felt in bereavement. Okay, psychologists actually are very much eager to know different experiences faced by people in their life. They are even very much interested to study the dream experiences of people also. One popular psychologist who is known as the father of abnormal psychology, like Sigmund Freud, he also developed one theory of dream. He stated that dreams are the royal route to unconscious, because he mostly emphasized on unconscious mind, because in unconscious mind we store so many things, and because of all these informations we may suffer from some conflicts, and hence we may develop some kinds of mental problems, and hence Sigmund Freud emphasized on all these unconscious mind. And the dreams actually are the royal road to unconscious. We experience different dreams in our life, and they actually are responsible for the activities that we face in our life. And through dreams we experience or actually we আমি কি কৰিব পাৰোঁ, এই যিবিলাক আমি ড্ৰিম দেখোঁ সেই ড্ৰিমবিলাকৰ পৰাই আমি আমাৰ ইণ্টাৰনেল কনফ্লিক্টছবিলাক কি কৰিব পাৰোঁ, মানে আনক বুজাব পাৰোঁ। একচুৱেলি চাইকলজিষ্টে সেই ড্ৰিমবিলাক এনালাইজ কৰি পেলাই মানুহৰ মনত কি কনফ্লিক্টছ আছে সেইবিলাক তেওঁলোকে কি কৰিব পাৰে, মানে এনালাইজ কৰিব পাৰে বা প্ৰেডিক্ট কৰিব পাৰে। চ' psychologists, they are very much interested to study different experiences of people. So experiences are influenced by internal and external conditions of the experiencer. Okay, so if you are traveling in a crowded bus during a hot summer day, you may not experience the usual discomfort if you are going for a picnic with some close friends. গতিকে কিবা এটা কাম কৰিবলৈ হ'লে আমাৰ একচুৱেলি কি হয়, কেতিয়াবা সেইটো কামে আমাক কি কৰিব পাৰে, মানে অলপ দুখ দিব পাৰে, বা যদি আমি খুব হেপী মোমেণ্টত কাম কৰোঁ, সেই এক্সপিৰিয়েঞ্চটোৰ পৰা আমাৰ কেতিয়াবা খুব কি হ'ব পাৰে, আমাৰ মানে ভাল হ'ব পাৰে। গতিকে কি হয়, একেটা ইভেণ্টৰ পৰাই কেতিয়াবা আমাৰ এক্সপিৰিয়েঞ্চেছবিলাক বেলেগ হ'ব পাৰে। কেতিয়াবা আমাৰ সেইটো হেক্টিক হ'ব পাৰে, কেতিয়াবা সেইটো প্লেজাৰেবল হ'ব পাৰে। একচুৱেলি অল দিজ আৰ ডিফাৰেণ্ট এক্সপিৰিয়েঞ্চেছ ডেট পিপল ফেচ ইন দেয়াৰ লাইফ। আমি পিকনিক খাবলৈ গ'লে খুব ভিৰত গ'লেও আমাৰ কিন্তু বেয়া নালাগে, বহুত হুলস্থুল হ'লেও আমাৰ বেয়া নালাগে। কিন্তু আমি যেতিয়া কিবা এটা কামত যাব লগা হয়, ছিৰিয়াছ কামত যাব লগা হয়, তেতিয়া আকৌ ভিৰ ভাৰত আমাৰ কাম কৰি ভাল নালাগে। গতিকে কি হয়, এইবিলাকৰ পৰা আমাৰ এই এক্সপিৰিয়েঞ্চবিলাকে আমাৰ বিষয়ে কি কৰিছে, মানে বুজাইছে। গতিকে মানুহৰ এক্সপিৰিয়েঞ্চেও কি কৰে, মানুহৰ বিষয়ে ভালকৈ বুজাব পাৰে বা মানুহৰ বিষয়ে ক'ব পাৰে। Thus, the nature of experience can only be understood by analyzing a complex set of internal and external conditions. গতিকে একেটা ইভেণ্টেই বেলেগ বেলেগ মানুহৰ কাৰণে বেলেগ হ'ব পাৰে। চ' psychologists in that sense are very much eager to study different experiences of people in that sense, and hence it is said that experiences are always subjective in nature. The next is known as the behaviors. So psychologists also are very much eager to study different behaviors of people. Now behaviors actually are the responses or reactions that we make or activities that we engage in. Okay, so behavior বুলি ক'লে আমি অকল মানে ধৰা এটা পাৰ্টিকুলাৰ বিহেভিয়াৰৰ কথা ক'ব নোৱাৰোঁ। behaviors are of several kinds. Behaviors may be simple, it may be complex, it may be overt, it may be covert, may be internal, external, then short, enduring, normal, abnormal, and so on. So these are different forms of behavior. Okay, like then smiling, then eating something. So these are some simple activities, but and these simple activities are known as the simple behaviors. But complex behaviors are like decision making, piloting an aircraft. All these are some complex activities of us, and hence they are known as the complex behaviors. Okay, now behaviors actually that can be outwardly seen or sensed by an observer, and that is known as the overt behavior. যিটো বেলেগে দেখিব পাৰে, কোনোবাই কিবা খাই আছে, কোনোবাই হাঁহিছে, these are overt behavior. But some behaviors are covert that cannot be outwardly seen by the other person, that is known as internal or covert behavior. Okay, এতিয়া কোনোবাই কিবা এটা ভাবি আছে, feeling বা thinking, that cannot be seen by others. So that type of behaviors are known as the covert behaviors. Okay, now some behaviors are also known as then normal behaviors. So normal activities are known as normal behaviors. চবেই যিটো কাম কৰিছে, society accept কৰিছে, চবেই মানুহে হাঁহিছে, হাঁহি উঠা কথা হৈছে কাৰণে মানুহে হাঁহিছে, that kind of smiling or laughing is known as the normal behavior. কিন্তু কোনোবা এজন মানুহে যেতিয়া বিহেভিয়াৰটো অলপ away from the societal norms হৈছে, but that is not acceptable by the society people, and that is known as the abnormal behavior. Okay, যেতিয়া চবেই হাঁহিছে এটা চিটুৱেশ্যনত, এই কোনোবা এজন ইণ্ডিভিজুৱেলে সেই চিটুৱেশ্যনটোত কান্দিছে বা চবেই কান্দা সময়ত তেওঁ হাঁহিছে, so this type of behavior is known as the abnormal behavior. And behavior that is for a short period of time is known as the short behavior, and that is long lasting is known as the enduring behavior. Okay, so these are different types of behavior. So psychologists study actually all these behaviors as an association between stimulus and response connections. Both stimulus and response can be internal or external. Now this picture shows different types of behavior, simple behaviors as well as some overt behaviors. So next topic is known as psychology as a discipline. Okay, so it is clear to us that psychology is formally defined as scientific study of mental process, experience, and behavior. Okay, so psychology studies all these processes, experiences, and behaviors. So it seeks to understand and explain how the mind works and how different mental processes result in different behaviors. So when we observe others as common persons, our our own points of view or our ways of understanding the world influence our interpretations of their behaviors and experiences. So psychologists actually try to minimize such biases in their explanations of behavior and experience in various ways. So there are different groups of psychologists. Some psychologists actually do so by seeking to make their analysis scientific and objective. Okay, so they use some scientific methods and they use some objective procedures to analyze these behaviors and mental processes and experiences of people. And others seek to explain behaviors from the point of view of the experiencing person because they think that subjectivity is a necessary aspect of human experience. So, for the other group of psychologists, it is not possible to use scientific method in studying all kinds of behaviors or mental processes or experiences of people because experiences are always subjective in nature, and hence by using some subjective procedures or subjective method only we can study or analyze persons behaviors in detailed ways. So in the Indian tradition, self-reflection and analysis of our conscious experiences also is held to be a major source of psychological understanding. So many Western psychologists also have begun to emphasize the role of self-reflection and self-knowledge in understanding human behavior and experience. Because so modern psychologists, they actually emphasize on self-reflection and self-knowledge in understanding human behavior. So regardless of these differences, in the way psychologists go about the study of behavior, mental processes, experiences, but this is true that they seek to understand and explain them in a systematic and verifiable manner. It may be scientific method, it may be subjective method, it may be other method, but this is true that all kinds of psychologists actually try to explain and understand human behavior, experience, and mental processes in a very systematic manner, in a very verifiable manner. Okay, so it is true that psychology is a very old knowledge discipline, but as a science, it is young. Uh, First psychology laboratory actually was established in Leipzig in the year 1879, that is in Germany. And when this laboratory was established, psychology became a science subject. But before that, it was a part of philosophy. Actually, when the laboratory was established, psychologists were able to study different experiences, mental processes, or behaviors of people in the laboratory settings. But what kind of science is psychology is still remains a matter of debate. Many psychologists state that it is a social science, and many psychologists state that it is a natural science, and so on. But it should not come to us as a surprise that not only in the other countries but in India also nowadays, it is a subject of study that is offered in the faculty of science, both at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels. Okay, now many colleges in commerce stream also they provide psychology as a subject. Okay, so many students go on to earn BSc, MSc degree in universities. In fact, two of the most sought after emerging disciplines which continuously borrow from psychology are neuroscience and computer science. Okay, they are highly related to the science psychology, the subject psychology. So there's some techniques actually like fMRI, EEG, that is known as electroencephalogram, so which make it possible to study brain processes in real time, that is when they are actually taking place. Similarly, in IT areas also both human-computer interaction and artificial intelligence cannot possibly grow without psychological knowledge in cognitive processes. Okay, in that sense, many psychologists demand psychology as a natural science, as a science subject. But actually it is true that psychology as a discipline today has two parallel streams. Okay, you always remember that there are two parallel streams of psychology. One which makes use of the method in physical and biological sciences, and the other which makes use of the method of social and cultural sciences in studying various psychological and social phenomena. Okay, so these two are the two parallel streams of psychology. Confused Nohabad, what are the two parallel streams of psychology? One is actually is known as the natural science and other one is known as the social or cultural science. Okay, so these streams sometimes converge only to drift apart and go their separate ways. So in the first case, that is psychology as a natural science, but it is a biological science. That কি কোৱা হৈছে যে psychology considers itself as a discipline which focuses largely on biological principles to explain human behavior. Okay. They've used actually some scientific procedures to explain human behavior, and they basically use biological principles to explain human behavior, and it assumes that all behavioral phenomena have causes which can be discovered if we can collect data systematically under controlled conditions. They mostly emphasize on cause-effect relationships. Okay. So here the aim of the researcher is to know the cause and effect relationships so that a prediction of the behavioral phenomena can be made and behavior can be controlled if need be. On the other hand, the second stream, it states that psychology is a social science, and as a social science it mainly focuses on how behavioral phenomena can be explained in terms of the interaction that takes place between the person and the socio-cultural context of which he or she is a part. Okay, so each behavioral phenomena is assumed to have multiple causes, and these two streams actually are discussed separately in a very detailed manner. So first one is known as the psychology as a natural science. So we all know that the root of psychology was in philosophy. So at a time, philosophers studied psychology in a very detailed way, and they defined psychology as the soul or mind. Okay, so however, modern psychology has developed because of the application of the scientific method to study psychological phenomena. Modern psychology too, actually it is known as the scientific psychology because psychologists, they have used the scientific procedures or systematic procedures to study the behavior or mental processes of individuals in a very detailed manner. So science in that sense plays a great deal of emphasis on objectivity, which can be obtained if there is consensus on the definition of a concept and how it can be measured. Actually, modern psychologists demand psychology as a scientific study, as a science, and it is completely based on objective procedures. Actually, it is known as objective, and here emphasis is mostly given on objectivity, which can be obtained if there is consensus on the definition of a concept. Okay, so at a time actually psychology was influenced by Descartes, who is known as the popular mathematician, philosopher, and also a scientist. And at a time psychology was highly influenced by Descartes' views, but later on psychology was influenced by physics. And actually, most of the developments of psychology are nowadays based on the concept of hypothetical deductive model, and this model actually was it is mostly used by the physicist. Okay, this model suggests that scientific advancement can take place if we have a theory to explain a phenomena. Okay, for example, physicists, they have what is called the Big Bang theory to explain how the universe came to be formed. So theory actually is nothing else but a set of statements about how a certain complex phenomenon can be explained with the help of propositions which are interrelated. So based on a theory, scientists deduce or propose a hypothesis, and that offers a tentative explanation of how a certain phenomenon takes place. The hypothesis is then tested and proved true or false based on empirical data that one has gathered. The theory is revised if data gathered point in a different direction than the one suggested by the hypothesis. Actually, this model states that anything if you want to prove, then it should be based on some scientific studies. It should be based on some procedures. Okay, first of all, the problem is raised, and on the basis of that problem the hypothesis is formulated. Actually, hypothesis is nothing that is a tentative answer to that problem, and then some data or informations are collected, and all these are analyzed in a very detailed manner by using some scientific or statistical procedures, and if all these are proved as true, then that is accepted, and if it is proved as false, then it is rejected, and then again another hypothesis is formulated to test that problem, whether it is true or false. And this is a systematic procedure mostly used by scientists, and psychologists also, they have adopted this procedure to establish different psychological concepts. Okay, so using this approach, psychologists also have developed different theories of learning, then memory, attention, perception, motivation, then emotion, and so on. And they have made significant progress. So apart from this approach, psychologists have also been considerably influenced by the evolutionary approach. Okay, and this approach is dominant in biological sciences. And this approach has also been used to explain diverse kinds of psychological phenomena such as attachment, aggression, and so on. So psychologists, they have used these two approaches that is mostly used by scientists. Okay, one is the hypothetico-deductive model and other one is the evolutionary approach. So by using these approaches, psychologists have developed different concepts, and different theories are based on these models and these approaches. In that sense, we can state that psychology is known as a natural science. Then second stream states that psychology is a social science. So maximum psychologists also state that psychology is recognized more as a social science because it studies the behavior of human beings in their socio-cultural context. So human beings actually cannot live as a single person. They always like to interact with people. They like to live in a group, and as a group member, they learn different things in their lives. They are not only influenced by their socio-cultural context, they also create that context. So psychology as a social science discipline focuses on humans as social beings. ইয়াত দেখাইছে ডায়াগ্ৰামটোত আমি অকলে কেতিয়াও থাকিব নোৱাৰোঁ, আমাক সদায় লগত পাৰ্টনাৰ লাগে বা আমাক গ্ৰুপ মেম্বাৰ্ছ লাগে, আৰু গ্ৰুপত থাকিলেহে আমি কি কৰিব পাৰোঁ, নিজৰ লাইফটো এটা নৰ্মেল ৱেত কণ্টিনিউ কৰি ৰাখিব পাৰোঁ। আৰু সেইকাৰণে এই ব্ৰাঞ্চটোৱে, এই মানে ডিচিপ্লিনটোৱে কৈছে যে চাইকলজি is recognized more as a social science, and as a social science it mainly focuses on humans as social beings. So social beings মানে আমি সদায় as single person we are different, but as a group member we also behave in different manner. So actually আমি কিছুমান এক্সাম্পলৰ হেল্প ল'লে আমাৰ বেছি ক্লিয়াৰ হ'ব এই কনচেপ্টটো বুজাত। তোমালোকৰ বুকতো দিছে, দুজনী বেলেগ ধৰণৰ ছোৱালীৰ কথা কৈছে, দুজনী নেচাৰে বেলেগ একচুৱেলি। ওৱান ইজ ন'ন এজ ৰঞ্জিতা, আদাৰ ওৱান ইজ শবনম। চ' ৰঞ্জিতা, she came from a farmer's family. Her grandparents, parents and elder brother worked on their farm. They lived together in their house in the village. But Ranjita, she was a good athlete and was a best long distance runner in the school, and she loved meeting people and making friends. But there is another girl, she is known as Sabnam. She lived with her mother in the same village. Her father worked in an office in a town nearby and came home during holidays. Sabnam was a good artist and loved staying home and taking care of her younger brother. She was shy and avoided meeting people. কিন্তু ইয়াত এটা মানে যেতিয়া এটা ইভেণ্ট আহি গ'ল বা এপিছ'ড আহি গ'ল, সেই এপিছ'ডটোৰ টাইমত কি কৰিলে, অলদো দিজ টু গাৰ্লছ আৰ কমপ্লিটলি ডিফাৰেণ্ট, আৰু নেচাৰ্ছ আৰ ডিফাৰেণ্ট, বাট ওৱান হেল্প দেন আদাৰ ওৱান। অ'কে, চ' এবাৰ ফ্লাডৰ টাইমত কি কৰিলে, যেতিয়া শবনমৰ ঘৰত পানী সোমাই গ'ল, তেতিয়া ৰঞ্জিতাই কি কৰিলে, ৰঞ্জিতা ৱাজ ভেৰি হেপ্পী হেল্পিং দ্য ফেমিলি এণ্ড মেকিং দেম ফিল কমফৰ্টেবল ইন দেয়াৰ হাউচ। চ' তাই কি কৰিলে, শবনমৰ ফেমিলিক পূৰা ছাপৰ্ট দিলে। যেতিয়া ফ্লাড ৱাটাৰে কমপ্লিট ঘৰটোত মানে সোমাই ঘৰটো নষ্ট কৰি দিলে, তেতিয়া ৰঞ্জিতাৰ মাদাৰে, গ্ৰেণ্ড মাদাৰে শবনমৰ মাদাৰক হেল্প কৰিলে, শবনমক হেল্প কৰিলে। দাছ দিজ টু ফেমিলিজ বিকেম ভেৰি ক্ল'জ। So this example actually, it states that human beings are by nature social. We cannot live as a single person. So although we are different person, we behave in different ways, our natures are completely different, and we may actually learn different things in our life. Our cultural or social conditions also are different, but during crisis we actually are very much eager to help one another. Okay, so individuals in communities become quite helpful and self-sacrificing in crisis or necessity, but sometimes the opposite also is true. People become antisocial under similar circumstances, indulging in looting and exploitation when some crisis or such crisis occurs. এতিয়া আমি কিছুমান এক্সাম্পল ধৰ হেল্প ল'লে আমি কথা ভালকৈ বুজি পাম কেতিয়াবা আমি দেখোঁ ৰাস্তাত যদি কিবা এক্সিডেণ্ট হৈ গাড়ী এখন পৰি আছে তাত ধৰা সেই গাড়ীখনত বহুত বেছি ধৰা গাখীৰ লোড কৰি আনিছিলে বা অইল লোড কৰি আনিছিলে মানুহে কি কৰে তেতিয়া তাত এক্সিডেণ্ট কোন হ'ল সেইটো কথা জানিবলৈ বিচৰাতকৈ কিছুমান মানুহে আকৌ কি কৰে সেই বস্তুখিনি কেনেকৈ নিজে ল'ব পাৰে সেই কথাটোতহে বেছি গুৰুত্ব দিয়ে যিখিনি বস্তু পৰি গৈছে বা তেল পৰি গৈছে বা গাখীৰ পৰি গৈছে সেইখিনি কেনেকৈ আনি নিজৰ মানে সুবিধাৰ কাৰণে ব্যৱহাৰ কৰিব পাৰি সেইখিনি কথাই বহুত মানুহে ভাবে গতিকে কিছুমান মানুহে কিন্তু সেই মানে বিপদত পৰা মানুহখিনি সহায় কৰিবৰ কাৰণে দৌৰি যায় কিন্তু কিছুমান মানুহে অকল নিজৰ স্বাৰ্থৰ কথাটো ভাবিহে কামটো কৰে চ' মানুহৰ একচুৱেলি নেচাৰ বেলেগ বেলেগ আৰু মানুহে বেলেগ বেলেগ সময়ত বেলেগ বেলেগ ধৰণে ৰিয়েক্ট কৰে So psychology deals with human behavior and experience in the context of their society and culture. Okay, as a social science, psychology focus on the individuals and communities in relation to their socio-cultural and physical environment. So from today's segment, it is clear to us that psychology actually psychology has two parallel streams. One is psychology is considered as a natural science and other one is psychology as a social science. And also it is clear to us that psychology is the scientific study of mental processes, experiences and behaviors in different contexts. Thank you.